welcome to episode 5 of our discussion on technological transformation in construction organizations. I'm joined by my co-host Roger and our guest Ryan Hale. Hey guys.
Hey Matt.
Matt, Roger, how are you guys?
Doing good.
Very well, thanks. In this episode, we're discussing failure. Ryan, do you have any stories of a small failure that could have been much worse to get us started?
I'm not sure we have enough time to talk about all the failures. I tend to be fairly hard on myself. I tend to be fairly hard on our teams that are executing initiatives. So I think failure is inevitable. And matter of fact, I like failure. I think failure is good. I think it's the only way we as humans actually learn anything. If we all sit around and high five every day and talk about how great we are and how great we're performing, I'm not sure that does a whole lot of good. There's time for that. But the way we get better as humans is constantly identifying where there's gaps in performance, or where there's gaps in a process, or where there's gaps in a series of data or whatever it may be, and trying to figure out ways to improve those and make those better. So plenty of examples of small failures. I think the biggest key is making sure that small failures don't become huge failures. And to do that, that's a combination of whoever's leading the project has to be looking for that and proactively thinking about that. And whoever is responsible for championing that project and coaching and managing that project manager, that project team through the project, has to be thinking 3 or 4 or 5 steps ahead, has to be trying to connect a bunch of dots, and has to set aside time to truly think through where the risk could be and try to alleviate those.
So how do you kind of instill that concept within the team that, in fact, failure is not only an opportunity to learn, but it's accepted and expected almost?
That's a good question. I think there was a famous Teddy Roosevelt quote about the man in the arena, right? And there's no effort without error and shortcoming. I think somewhere in this long quote he says that, and at the same time, I think that if you're not setting that expectation with the team that, look, what we're doing here, guys, is not easy, because if it were easy, one, it probably wouldn't have been prioritized to the top of this project list to go solve. But 2, if it were easy, it'd already be solved. Someone have already solved it, right? So every project that we embark on, whether it's transformation around technology or whether it be process improvement, it's something that hasn't been done before. So it's inevitable that we're not going to get it 100% right. We need to strive for that, but it's inevitable we won't get that. And that's okay, because we're going to make life for folks 80, 90, 95% better. We're going to miss on 5% of it, and it'll serve as the next round of improvement opportunities in the future. I don't think there's magic to it. I think it's having that conversation, setting the bar high that we are going to execute as best we can, but we're also not going to get completely locked up because we can't get 100% of every solution 100% correct, because it'll never happen. You would never roll out anything.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a mindset. It's a continuous improvement mindset.
Continuous improvement mindset. Absolutely, Ryan. I agree. And I personally try to take that view on the way that I approach the things that I do as well. Thinking about, though, there is a line, right? And I'm curious if you could speak a little bit more about where the line is, as far as, failure is good and we're encouraging that, we want openness, but sometimes failure is not good and it's too big and it's too far. And I know this varies depending on the project, but maybe you've got a story or some thoughts on how do you get a feel for where that line is on a certain thing that you're working on.
Yeah, I think as a leader of projects and a leader of people leading projects, big honking failures happen when you're not paying attention. So if you aren't plugged into that team enough, if you don't know what they're doing, if you don't understand the progress they're making, and you don't understand the variables they're wrestling with, then yeah, you're probably going to get punched in the mouth with some awful big failures. So I think that's a gap in leadership at that stage. I think if you are plugged into the teams and you understand what they're doing and you are truly trying to help them drive the project, better themselves, I think you should probably have an eye out for what the next risk or the next series of risks could be. And if you're doing that, if you're just interacting with the teams and trying to understand what the next item could be, I don't understand how the risk could be so big that it completely falls off the rails. If it is, you're not spending enough time thinking through what that project is. You're not spending enough time thinking through that process. You're not spending enough time with that team to understand what they're wrestling with. If you are, you're plugged in enough to know a week, 2, 3 ahead of time, ooh, wait a second, that could come to bite us. So let's talk about that and let's figure out if there's something there where we need to put in place. If there's something we need to do differently, if there's other resources to bring to the table. I don't think any of this is necessarily rocket science. It's just a matter of being plugged in, acting as a leader, and then supervising the teams appropriately so that you know what they're doing and where they're going.
So given a lot of the value of failure is the lessons learned, how do you go about communicating or socializing those lessons so that someone in the future is aware of them and can make better decisions?
Yeah, I think it starts with when you're done with a project, make some time to sit down and talk about what went right and what didn't go right. And those are challenging conversations. When you complete an initiative, obviously everyone wants to cheer and high five. And of course they need to do that. They just work their tail off to accomplish something that, again, hadn't been accomplished before, right? So they need to have that time. But then shortly after that, I think you need to, before you take everyone and send them off back to their jobs or send them off to the next initiative, you've got to carve out the time that says, hey, we did a good job, guys. And no one's saying we didn't. But let's put our constructive criticism hat on and say, if we could do this over, what are the items that we would do over? Now that's challenging because typically everyone comes into those meetings with their defensive shields up, because now you're saying what you did was good, but it wasn't good enough. So it's a challenging conversation. But if you're not starting there, then you're missing a great opportunity to learn individually, for the team, for the organization. Now here at Lithgow, we're lucky enough that almost every initiative we do, it has someone from our project management office, from my team, attached to it. So it's easy to set the expectations that we're going to do a lessons learned session with the team, because it's the folks in the PMO office that drive those conversations. It's an easy expectation to say, okay, based on that, next time a project comes up that kind of sort of smells or looks like that, we're going to go back and we're going to look at those lessons learned and think about them, right? Do we do it perfectly? Absolutely not. But just having the expectation there that we're going to do it, that is the first step. Following through to doing it is the second step. And then having this centralized organization that can at least think about, oh, last time we did that, man, we really messed that up. That's the third step. That's the goal, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome stuff. One final question for you on this topic, Ryan. What advice would you give to anyone faced with a failure in their efforts to implement some sort of technological transformation in their organization?
Learn from it, right? I mean, learn all you can from it. Don't be defensive. Be self-reflective. Identify what you did wrong. Identify what you would have done differently in the project plan or in the schedule, or how you would have interacted with team members differently or interacted with vendors differently, whatever it is. If you go about it saying, well, this project delivered what we said, or 50% of what we said, or 75% of what we said, but hey, that's better than not doing the project at all. I mean, yeah, there's some truth in that, but you're shortchanging yourself. After every initiative, I think there's 10 or 15 things that probably should easily come to mind of what could have been done differently. So if you're not creating that list, if you're not taking that self-reflective time to create that list and thinking about how you would do it differently next time, you're going to find yourself back in the same situation, and then the same situation, and then the same situation. And eventually, if you find yourself in enough situations where you didn't achieve 80%, you didn't achieve 100%, you didn't achieve 95% of what you should have, then the conversations with your leadership and your management are probably going to look different, right? So learn from yourself, learn from every situation you can.
Thanks again, Ryan. It becomes obvious why Lithgow is one of the U.S. best managed companies with, approaches like that. I think it really can make a difference. So thank you for your time. Look forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See you, Ryan.